The Liberal Party says he has the answer to getting higher voter turnouts. The suggestion? Lower the voting age to 16. Jeff Marshall is the treasurer with the Provincial Liberal Party, and Jeff's in the studio with me. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, interesting conversation that you've sparked on Twitter this morning, and it's also a question on our website, cbc.ca/NL. Check that out. Why, Jeff, are you suggesting that the province lower the voting age to 16?
Well, first of all, we got to start from the argument that there's 18 or any age that we pick is going to be an arbitrary number. No one really wakes up on their 18th birthday and are suddenly more mature than they were the day before.
Right.
So if we can agree that any age is an arbitrary number, we've got to think, well, what number is going to not only engage youth today, but also help raise the future generation of people who are going to be active voters and active in politics and engaged.
Okay.
When you're 16 years old, you're in high school, relatively stable environment, you're more likely to know your local candidate, more likely to be aware of the local issues and have opinions on things that you formed just by virtue of growing up in that community. When you're 18, people are changing communities to go to school, go to somewhere else to work.
Right.
And again, just like I said before, with the advantage of being from that community, they're less likely to know the candidate. They don't know the local issues, and they're busy adapting to a new stage of their life.
Any jurisdictions around Canada or anywhere else in the world that actually has a voting age of 16 that you know of?
None that I know of. I'm fairly certain there's none in Canada, but I think it would be a great thing for Newfoundland and Labrador as a small province.
Do you want Newfoundland to lead the way on this?
I want to lead the way on this as a smart policy that we can increase turnout, not only among the 16-year-olds who would be able to vote, but also their parents. There was actually an interesting study done from Duke University a number of years ago where they studied the voter turnout of parents of children who participated in a mock vote, and they found that those parents had significantly increased their voter turnout because the theory being that they're coming home and talking about what they learned in school, and around the supper table people are talking about politics and talking about the election coming up.
I can sort of hear some people saying that 16 is just too young, that 16-year-olds, first of all, most of them don't pay taxes, not sure exactly how engaged they'd be in the issues in general. What would you say to that argument against it?
I would answer that with the question, say, define ready, because there's no magic age where someone is going to be automatically ready, and I'm sure that some people might be thinking to themselves right now, maybe some people are never ready by that definition. I mean, it's something we just got to think now. There's no magic age, so how can we pick an age where people are more likely to start that habit where they vote at first opportunity, so that they continue that habit throughout the rest of their lives?
One interesting thing, though, Jeff is a guy who tries to keep his eyes on what's going on in politics. When you actually take a look at the numbers, when you break down the voting patterns of adult Canadians, that 18 to 25 block, as you probably know, it's not exactly stellar. What makes you think that people from 16 to 18 are going to vote in any more significant numbers than those between 18 to 25?
And they may not at first, but this will be a long-term thing. When people vote at first opportunity, then it becomes a habit. I mean, if you talk to people who are active voters and voted every single election, and if you ask them when did they start to vote, a lot of them started voting at their first opportunity, 18, 19 years old, whenever their first election was. So if you have their first opportunity be in the relative stability of their home in high school, where there's their home community, where they're more likely to be familiar with the local issues and the local candidates, then you establish that habit early.
Right.
So in the election next year, it might not have a huge effect, but 5, 10, 20 years down the road, I believe we'll start seeing a substantial increase.
So if you get to
turnout.
people when they're 15, 16, then they might vote through that first two election cycles they would go through. Maybe. Exactly.
I mean, think next year or this coming year we have a provincial and a federal election.
Yeah.
If someone graduates high school this year, they move to a different province or municipality, they're dealing with all the stresses of that. Then you have 2 elections right in a row where they don't know the local candidate or the local issues, and they haven't had time to connect to the community. Then they're very unlikely to vote.
I guess the other thing, too, Jeff, is that in high schools right now, if you're studying history in grade 10, 11, or 12, or talking about politics in any of your classes, it's sort of, it's almost academic in the truest sense, in that you'd be talking about politics, say, okay, when you are 18 or when you're of age, you'll be able to vote. Whereas if you could vote at 16 and you're in grade 10 or 11, it would actually be, okay, we're talking about something that I can actually do as opposed to something that I will be able to do. Maybe there's a connection between civic responsibility and the education system.
Exactly. I mean, it would pique interest in any civics that people would learn in school, like you say, and also too, I'm sure you'd have absolutely no problem having a candidate get in front of 30, 40 potential voters to tell them what this election means to them and what it will mean to them as they get older.
Right. How old are you?
I'm 30.
30. What do you think is an important political issue in the minds of most 16-year-olds?
I would say with most 16-year-olds, they're worried about having a job where they want to live when they graduate high school, being able to afford the education that they want, graduating without a student debt load that's going to hold them back.
Right.
I think that the issues of 16-year-olds would likely be very similar to the issues of 18 and 19-year-olds.
As far as the party goes, when you talk to fellow card-carrying liberals, what do they make of your idea?
I was actually quite surprised at once their initial reactions usually, I don't know, 16 years old, but then once you get into the conversation and you really start talking about the advantages that it could have, and people really think about, well, what's the downside here, right? I mean, if you think about that, I mean, it's hard to come up with a real strong downside with all the positives. So once the conversation gets around to that, I mean, people are coming around to it, and I'm looking forward to a good debate about it, because we're hoping to form government after the next election. So we want to make sure that any policy that we're bringing forward, we're giving it due diligence and considering all the potential outcomes. But
right. I noticed on Twitter Dale Kirby, who I think just won the nomination to run again, albeit this time as a Liberal. On Twitter, he says in 2011, the German state of Bremen joined Austria in lowering the voting age to 16. So there are places that have done this.
It's interesting.
Dale Kirby, shamelessly going after the youth vote, even though the writ hasn't dropped yet. Let me ask you this. If I asked Dwight Ball, what do you think of this idea of lowering the voting age to 16, what would he say to me?
Well,
You'll have to ask Dwight Ball.
Yeah, you'll have to ask Dwight Ball, but I mean, we'll definitely, I'm sure Dwight will participate in all the debates around policy, because I mean he's clearly very interested in what the Liberal members and people at large have to think about issues. So I mean,
this will be debated at your convention?
That's right, yeah.
And that's this coming weekend?
This coming Saturday in Gander.
That's right. Well, listen, Jeff, it's certainly an interesting issue, and it's causing all kinds of different reaction. And I have to say, most of it so far I think is favorable to the idea, which I have to say I find kind of surprising. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Jeff Marshall, treasurer of the Provincial Liberal Party in our province, hopes to be the Liberal candidate for Kilbride in the next provincial election. How's that going?
Oh, it's going well. Yeah, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, so I'm keeping.
You've learned all the right phrases. Thanks for coming in. Provincial Liberal Convention scheduled for this weekend in Gander. Your thoughts? You can send me a tweet at Anthony Germain. Should we lower the voting age to 16? Or call the morning line, 576-5259. And you can vote on this. Go to our website, cbc.ca/NL. Time now for a little traffic.